Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you're listening, wherever you're listening. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is where you get all your ultimate odds, stats, and great deals. Go to betonline.ag. Bet Online, where the game starts. It's also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go to the Underdog Fantasy app or underdog.com. Put in promo code USCLAFB for a $100 match. Underdog Fantasy. Big news, Madman. Before we jump into the big news, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Coach. Great to see you as always. Feels like since we've done the last episode, so much has happened in Trojan land. As there's never a dull moment, it seems, in USC football. So we just did a show a couple days, 48 hours ago, and that feels like forever. So I'm excited to get into all the tectonic shifts with you this evening. Hope you're doing well.
Tectonic shifts. That's an earthquake.
That's an earthquake. Well, I think the Bullock just had an earthquake. So
that's an earthquake. Yeah, I'm doing well. I have both kids by myself tonight. Everything's going well. I got one down to sleep. I got one more to put to sleep, but
I love it. I love it.
So you'll hear them in the background.
Oh, I love it. So sweet.
Yeah. So, big news came out. The people got what they've been asking for. Rumor mill, not a rumor, it's actually true. It's been confirmed by multiple sources. It's been confirmed, I believe, by Lincoln Riley. Even confirmed it officially, right?
Totally.
Jayden Maiava is now the starting quarterback for USC. Miller Moss is now back to number 2. What does this mean, Madman, for the Trojans moving forward?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, it's the story that we were sort of expecting, and I think if we sort of broke it down over the last several weeks, I had said that I think the bye week would be the opportunity to make a quarterback change because you get 2 full weeks of preparation. It's almost like a pseudo mini camp for Maiava, and then you get the opportunity, a nice 3-game sample set. You don't have to leave the city of Los Angeles. You get 3 consecutive games. And you get a nice sample size to see what you have in Maiava going into 2025 and what that quarterback competition looks like in 25. If Maiava balls out the way Miller did against, Louisville in the Holiday Bowl, guess what? You have your quarterback for next year. If he, God forbid, he doesn't perform well at all, then you really have to lean into the portal. Or if he's, shows flashes, but, has really good moments, doesn't have great moments, is learning, then you have something to work with, but it's going to feel more like a quarterback competition, in the spring. So you have to sort of put him out there. He's been sitting for you for a year as the conference player of the year last year, and now we get the opportunity to see Maiava's skill sets. And obviously everyone is salivating over just the raw physical tools, right? He's a significantly great athlete. Obviously, dual threat, very much in that line of the Lincoln Riley quarterbacks of the past, like Baker and Kyler and Caleb and Jaylin. He definitely fits that mold, and just raw athleticism, huge arm. Stylistically, Coach, without seeing a ton yet in terms of the field as a Trojan. Obviously, he had a lot with UNLV last year. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Kaepernick. He's got kind of that style. He's a little long. He's mobile. That release also reminds me of Colin Kaepernick a little bit, and Kaepernick was really phenomenal in college as well. So let's see. We got the Maiava experiment. And, up first is Nebraska, and then the 2 rivalry games. I really feel for Miller, Coach, particularly given that he's been such a ambassador of USC. He's a Trojan at heart. It's a little bit of sort of cruel irony that he gets to have 10 starts, but he doesn't get to be the quarterback against UCLA or Notre Dame. And so it just doesn't feel like you were totally USC's quarterback. If you don't get the opportunity to sort of play in those rivalry games, it's a little bittersweet. But wishing nothing but the best for Miller. And again, I think Miller has done some outstanding things over the course of the season. Unfortunately, the turnovers at inopportune times was really critical. That combined with you're sitting at 4-5 with really nothing to play for from a postseason perspective in terms of really high quality bowl game. This is the perfect opportunity to see what you have with Maiava and really assess your quarterback room in totality. So should be some juice in the building, Coach, next week against Nebraska to see what this kid really has. And the Maiava era begins next week against Nebraska, and I think there's an excitement, a mysterious excitement to see what this is really going to look like.
Yeah, I am more of on the phrase like there need. I should say this. Let me preface it with this. There needed to be some type of change that needed to happen. This is the perfect time for him to happen because he gets a lot of preparation. It's unfortunate by what happened, but there needed to be some type of change. There needed to be a shakeup. The problem is that the demand for him to get in, I feel puts more pressure on him to perform at a higher level. Now, with that being said, what if he doesn't perform well? Where do we go from here? You know what I mean? Like, how quick are the fans going to turn on him? Is it just as fast as they turn on Miller Moss? You know what I mean? If he doesn't perform well, is Miller Moss your starting quarterback for UCLA? Does he start at Notre Dame? Like, there's so many questions. There's so many unknowns that's happening here because of the pressure from outside of the locker room. Now, do I think this decision was made because of pressure from the outside of the locker room? I don't think so. I think, like you said, I think right now was the perfect time to do it. But, I mean, the pressure for him to perform, right? Everybody's expecting him to come in and be Caleb Williams right away. So if he's not Caleb Williams right away, where do we go from here? Now everybody's going to be calling for Juju. Now we're creating a rotating door. I'm saying we, but the fans, right? Like, because we've been kind of steadfast on this, and we always all agree, like, right now is the time to do it. But if he doesn't perform like Caleb Williams, and then now we want Juju, then Juju doesn't perform, we need another. We're recreating a rotating door at the quarterback position. I will say this. I think Lincoln Riley handled this very well. I think he did it at the right time. This shows some growth of improvement. But hopefully he learns at his next job, because I don't think he's going to last at SC. I'm just being honest. Hopefully he learns at his next job that, you know, like, you got to actually create a battle. And I'll mention something that we talked about early in the year. We talked about this early in the year, and I think he did the same thing, and I think this is why we are where we are now in terms of competition. But as far as Maiava goes, he gets a great warm-up game with Nebraska, right? Patrick Mahomes III is going to come in and throw the ball to SC a couple of times like he's been doing all year. He gets to play UCLA, who's hot right now, right? I think they play Iowa at home this weekend.
Yep.
And they have USC. And then who do they finish with?
So UCLA's got at Washington after the Iowa game before the SC game.
Oh,
and then they
okay.
finish with Fresno State. Yep.
Wait. But after Nebraska, we play UCLA.
Yeah, but because we
Iowa this weekend. I'm sorry. Iowa this weekend. And then next weekend,
when we're playing Nebraska, they're playing
Nebraska's
Washington.
Washington, and then USC, and that ends their season, right?
No, then they got Fresno State when we have Notre Dame.
Well, okay, there we go. So they could finish bowl eligible, and I think they're trying to make a bowl game. There's a chance, right?
It's a run. There's a run.
So,
if they can get that Iowa game tomorrow night, it gets really interesting.
Yeah, and then they're playing Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is trying to get a playoff spot. They're trying to get that 5 seed, right? That 5 seed. So, I mean, the schedule ain't easy coming out of this thing, and there's a possibility. And I'm not being negative. I don't think I'm being negative, but I'm being more realistic. It's a 50-50 chance of this dude to walk in and just shut the place down. And there's a chance this dude walks in and be like, we need to figure out quarterback. We got to go to the portal fast, so we need to hit it hard, right? So that's that thing. My perspective is, I think we need to be patient with him for this next 3 games, because he gets a 3-game preseason, then he gets spring ball, then he gets fall camp, and then let him have his whole season. He's being thrown in the junk right now, so let's not count this against him. You know what I'm saying, man? You agree to that or disagree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Coach. And I think that the likelihood of Jayden Maiava getting all 3 games is near 100%. You can never say 100%, in college football. But short of him having like a 4 or 5 interception game against Nebraska and SC putting up like 10 or 13 points and losing to Nebraska by double digits at home, short of something like that, where you're just like, man, this is just not even a credible situation right now. And just for the sake of the rivalry, we're going to need to be a little bit more competitive. Short of an outcome like that, he's going to get all 3 games, because I think Lincoln, to his credit, he doesn't like making quarterback switches. He likes sticking with the guy that he's picked. And then from an adjustment standpoint, he's always going to look at scheme over personnel. He's always thinking, how do I change my scheme? How do I change my play calling? How do I change sort of my offensive tactics more so than changing individuals, right? That's one of the reasons why, fans were clamoring for the Miller change, you could argue, several weeks earlier, and it only happened here. And I think, to your point, Coach, I think he did a phenomenal job in handling it, because you want to wait for the bye and go from there. So I think Maiava is going to get all 3 games. I think he's going to make some mistakes. And to your point, I think the schedule lines up nicely, because Nebraska right now feels a lot like Rutgers did a few weeks ago, right? It's a team that is trending in the wrong direction. When we played Rutgers, they had a 3-game losing streak. When we're going to play Nebraska, they've got a 3-game losing streak. It feels like they're reeling right now, don't really have a lot of answers offensively. So having to come to the Coliseum and have to be more explosive, where they haven't really shown it over the last 3 or 4 games, they've failed to score 20 points. I think it's a really nice situation for Maiava to come in there, be very comfortable at home, have the crowd support, and know that the game is, I think, going to be played on USC's terms in the way it was played on Trojan terms against Rutgers as well as with Wisconsin. So I think that's going to give him some confidence, even if he makes some mistakes. Then you kind of get into the 2 rivalry games. One rival trying to make a bowl game, another rival trying to make the playoff. So you're gonna see 2 desperate rivals here. And I think that's going to be such a great signal and such a great experience for him moving forward. And I think in terms of the quarterback room itself, Coach, we have to wonder, where Miller Moss goes from here as well, right? I mean, someone who's waited his turn in the program, got the 10 starts. Now, he's been asked to be QB2. Does he stick it out for one more year? Does he, kind of finish it up at USC? Or, now that he's gotten a taste of being a starter, 10 starts, look, Miller Moss, for all of his faults, second leading passer in the Big Ten from a yards perspective, right? So now does he say, I got to go in the portal and get an opportunity elsewhere? I think that's going to be the likely outcome. So then Lincoln's going to have to go into the portal himself and say, how do I supplement Maiava with another quarterback? Because you can't just go in with Maiava on your own, and let's see how it sort of plays out with Juju. Obviously, Juju has, visited Colorado. Now some reports have come out that he's not, in fact, going to visit Indiana. So, feeling better about Juju, but we'll see where that shakes out. So is this room now in the spring going to be Maiava and Juju and some others? Is it going to be Maiava, Miller, and Juju and some others? Is it just going to be Maiava and you're going to have to go to the portal? I think that will be seen here in the weeks to come, based on kind of the Juju decision, as well as what Miller Moss does with his final year of eligibility.
So what if I told you I think this could have been prevented? Okay. And the reason why I say it could have been prevented is because I think that there was not a true competition in camp. And we talked about this early in the spring. We talked about this whole quarterback competition. And I remember saying that you know who your starter is, but the team doesn't need to know who your starter is. You know what I mean? Like, you need to create a competition, make him think that his job is always in jeopardy. I don't think that was done. And I think this is the second time Lincoln Riley has not created competition with his quarterback to make him better. I don't think he ever felt the heat on him. And I think him having the heat on him made him a better player. Look at LSU. You know what I mean? Look at Louisville. Like, I think he's better playing under pressure. I just think that there was a big mistake made. My personal opinion, I don't think there was any type of competition realistically. I think it was like, this is Miller's job, and I think he was afraid of losing. You can't be afraid of the portal in today's game. The portal's going to be there. The portal's not going anywhere. If you lose a guy to the portal, you lose a guy to the portal. That team's still going to be there with or without that guy. And you have to learn how to be a coach to replace. You know what I mean? If you can't change the player, change the player. You just have to be able to replace the guy and not worry about losing him. And I think Lincoln Riley has fell victim to that. And I can tell you, and the reason why I can tell you that is because let's just say we have a year like, what was that, 2016 or 2017 or something like that, when J.D. Daniels, Jackson Dart all went down, and they were down to
18.
JT.
Yeah, that was that 5-7 team. Yep.
Yeah, they all went down, and then they was down to the third string quarterback. Let's say Miller Moss goes down, Maiava goes down. Who's the last quarterback to come in? There's no depth at quarterback either. Like, he's trusting in this 2-quarterback system, which I don't think is smart, which I think is a fear of the portal. You got to create competition. I think if he felt that fire under the whole year and knew that anytime he could have got pulled and replaced, I think we would have had a better situation. He didn't have that. We saw that with Caleb. We saw how Caleb's attitude was last year compared to his first year. And that's just another Lincoln Riley flaw. I don't know how you change it. I just think really Lincoln Riley needs to go see a sports psychologist at the end of this year. No, seriously, not in a bad way, but like there's a lot of things flaw-wise that he has, and I just think he needs to fix it. But back on track, like I think the lack of fire under Miller Moss is the reason why we are here today. And I mean, you ask where do we go from here? He either has to go to the draft and go be a 4th rounder now, and hopefully he turns into a Sam Darnold, or he goes try somewhere else in college football. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Coach, it's an interesting point. I'll come to sort of Riley's defense a little bit here, just, in the spirit of fairness. I think we have to remember the circumstances under which Miller Moss made that start against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl. I think it's easy to sort of forget. I mean, look at the state of culture. We've talked so much about culture the last week or so about this 24 team. What was the state of culture with that 23 team, if you recall? Remember, I mean, there was just so much. There was just a weird air with kind of Caleb's level of connection with his teammates. There just seemed to be such a significant disconnect. We talked a lot about body language last year. We talked a lot about kind of the Caleb-Lincoln dynamic. We talked a lot about kind of Caleb almost breaking the system and not really sort of following the script, which was sort of a detriment. And then remember what happened in that Holiday Bowl with Miller going for 6 touchdowns. Remember the enthusiasm of the team. I mean, everyone shouting, "We're a team now." They were jumping up and down, so hyped. I mean, it was such a galvanizing moment for USC football last year that I think Lincoln was in a very difficult spot. If you take that moment and then say, okay, Maiava's going to be the starter, I think you would have had a challenge in the locker room because so many players sort of fell in love with Miller after that Holiday Bowl, A, for sort of waiting it out and sticking it out, and then B, for balling out. And I think if he went with another quarterback, I think it would have been a little bit challenging in the locker room. Now, to your point, you always want to emphasize competition, but I think he was in a tough spot. Excuse me. I think he was in a tough spot. Even if Miller, throws for 3 touchdowns and a pick, or 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, and it was a good performance, it would be one thing. But 6 touchdowns, MVP, I mean, tied for most touchdown passes in the history of USC in a single game with the likes of Palmer and Leinart and Caleb, et cetera. Really hard, I think, to transition to Maiava. But now I think you sort of get that quarterbacking opportunity, and we'll see, Coach, where it goes with Miller. I mean, there's been some murmurs on social media, nothing substantiated from sort of our community, but you're hearing some things floating around that Miller is already going to go into the portal, and maybe he wants to sort of look at Michigan as a fit. And it's ironic because over the weekend we had talked about, why, Miller kind of feels a lot like J.J. McCarthy. Why doesn't, you sort of change it more to a run-heavy approach? It would be very ironic if Miller ended up, in fact, with Michigan, given some of that commentary. So we'll see where this goes, Coach. I hear you, but it's also, I think this is one of those instances where tough situation there. When you have a Holiday Bowl MVP in such an emphatic performance, and then you decide to go with someone else who, has only been on campus for a couple of months, hasn't played, Power 4 football, that's a weird dynamic as well. So hindsight, I think, is always going to be 2020. But now let's see what happens with this sort of Maiava-Moss dynamic, because make no mistake, it's an absolute competition at this point.
No shot. No shot. Players know. That's the one thing that's the one thing that players know. I don't care if you walk in, and I'll give you a good example. Tua and Jalen Hurts.
Right.
They knew Tua was better than Jalen Hurts.
Right.
They knew it, and they stuck with it. And it finally came and got him. And then Jaylin decided to stay, and Tua took the job. Like they know. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so I think I think if Maiava would have started in a true competition, maybe there was a true competition. I don't know. So, but let's just say there wasn't. I'm speaking in terms of there wasn't, and players are seeing like, oh, this Maiava dude is better than Miller Moss. Like, you start to kill the locker room in that way too. Like, that's the guy that we want, but we're not giving him the chance because Miller's been here. Like, at this point, it's like now the Holiday Bowl means nothing. You get what I'm saying?
Right. No.
So,
Holiday Bowl's a memory. But
yeah, so
the coach, to that point, right? The players know, but he balled out in the Holiday Bowl. Then even if you're sort of skeptical in spring, you came and beat top 15 LSU. First top 15 win for USC since 2017. And then you follow that up with that 48-0 win against Utah State, right? So even if you are perhaps skeptical, you're 2-0, you're top 15 in the country, so even you're kind of like, okay, let's roll with it. I mean, I personally maybe would have gone Maiava. Like I'm sort of putting on my player hat in this sort of hypothetical situation of saying, my opinion, being at practices and whatnot and playing, I would have maybe gone with Maiava. But look, we're 2-0 and we got this thing rolling, so I'm good now, And so I think it was quiet, even if that were the case, because the start was also so emphatic, building off of that Holiday Bowl game. Now, it was 2-0, 3-1. Even that Michigan game didn't really feel like, even though Miller had the big pick, so much of the conversation right after that week was officiating and the physicality and how could we blow this lead. I mean, it was more on Lynn, truthfully, than it was on Miller in the Michigan game. We come back, we beat Wisconsin 3-1, and then it starts sort of unraveling these last 5 weeks. And you could argue, okay, maybe you could have started Maiava for Washington, but I think up until that point, Miller was still kind of throwing dimes, throwing picks. And then Washington, I think, was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I don't know how Lincoln could have done this sort of differently outside of just starting Maiava from the get-go. But then again, we went, we beat LSU. And I think that's the deeper point here, Coach. I think the state of the team and the state of the program goes beyond the quarterback. I think we've got deeper problems than pure quarterback play here, because you've got the second leading passer in the Big Ten. I get it. He's not an athlete. I get it. He's not the dual threat quarterback. But if you look at what's going on the defensive side of the ball, you look at what's going on with the offensive line, you look at still the lack of a true one emerging. We think it's, let's see, it's looking like lemon, but it's not confirmed yet. You look at all of these other elements, that there's more to it than just the quarterback. And so I think that's also where we got to keep our head set, to your point, where if Maiava doesn't, perform well, I think the question has to be not, okay, now let's go get the next quarterback. Let's just go get Julian. But what else is going on here, that we need to fix? Because I think it's deeper than just the quarterback.
I agree with you. And, I'm always going to think it's deeper than the quarterback. Like, I think there's more underlying issues that are going on. And Candace used to say it all the time, players are a reflection of their coach. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on that it's starting to look, how about this? It's starting to look like he's really not ready for a job of this caliber. And you'll say, yeah, he had Oklahoma, right? I don't want to go off on this tangent, and I won't stay long on here. But you can say, yeah, he had Oklahoma, but Oklahoma was given to him. Right?
No, totally.
This is a rebuild, and I don't think he was ready to rebuild a program. You have to be a special guy to rebuild a blue blood. I don't think he's that special. You agree or disagree?
No, I mean, all the evidence shows that because, his first 3 years, look, Coach, I mean, he was 5 years at OU, and now this is 3 years at USC. He's been 8 years as a coach. His first 3 years he made the playoff. His last 5 years he didn't make the playoff, right? I mean, so it's a weird trajectory, right? I mean, if SC loses one more game this season, he's going to lose fewer games at SC every year. It's going to go from 11 to 8 to less than 8. Like, So all these trends are sort of going in the wrong direction. I mean, you should be sort of the curve should be going the other way. So I totally agree with you. Stoops, literally, I mean, Stoops had an office at OU the way Saban still has an office at Alabama. I mean, Stoops was so involved in the mid to late 2010s for OU. He really set up Lincoln for success with the succession planning. And, it shows. It absolutely shows that he inherited a Ferrari there. But the moment he's had to sort of do it on his own, that's where now, first 3 years, college football playoff, last 5 years, no college football playoff, including a year where the playoff went from 4 to 12.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And then he hightailed it out on the midnight fight, just like the Baltimore Colts did, right? So let's stay on quarterbacks. There's been a lot of, how do you put it? A lot of murmuring around about our top prospect coming in. We're about a month away, I guess you would say.
Yep, just about a little more. Yep,
we're about a month away from National Signing Day. Julian Lewis has been taking visits. He took a visit to Colorado. He was supposed to take a visit to Indiana. There's some reports coming out now that he's no longer taking a visit to Indiana. Woody Mark's mom is the one that sent the tweet. She said, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me. I couldn't find it. She said that he was just going to Colorado for the competition, but he's still truly a Trojan. Indiana was never a choice. Something like that. Right. Something along that. You guys will go look it up. I'm going to transfer it over from Julian Lewis. Let's just talk about top recruits in general. There's recruits that are also saying they're staying committed to SC regardless of the record because they know what they could do there, right? At this point in time, it shouldn't be an issue. You know what I mean? At this point in time, we shouldn't be worried about recruits. In the old days, you could be like, all right, fine. If they're going to stay, they're going to stay. We're stuck with them for 4 years. If they transfer, they lose a year, it doesn't really matter. In today's game, it's a problem because now, if they're not happy, they can leave in the spring. Right? Like the offensive tackle did. I don't even remember his name. But Julian Lewis is no longer going to Indiana.
Yeah, the IMG kid from Florida. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Julian Lewis is no longer going to Indiana on his visit. I kind of figured he wouldn't go. It made no sense for him to go. I can't see Indiana being a powerhouse for forever, right? But is he taking advantage of visits? This is the question I'm going to pose. Is he taking advantage of visits? Or do you think he really is shopping? I'll leave it to you on that one.
Yeah, Coach, I think he's shopping, but I think he might not be shopping for next year. He might be shopping for the year after. I think that what the transfer portal and all the rules and everything with NIL has done now is you're almost sort of treating it like you're a professional, right? Like, hey, I'm happy in my job, but let's say you get a message on LinkedIn or you have an old boss kind of reach out to you via email or text and say, hey, let's grab coffee and just sort of talk about the future. You're always going to take that call because you're always going to keep your optionality high. You're always going to keep your doors open because you're going to say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. You don't have the crystal ball in sort of your job or your company or your situation. Hey, I always never burn a bridge. Keep all your doors open. Remain having options. And so I think that's kind of what he's doing too, because, if Coach Prime asks you, hey, come and take a visit, and you just say, no, I'm good, you're kind of burning a bridge there, right? And how does that help you? I mean, in this day and age, Coach, look at what we just said 6 minutes ago on this podcast. We talked about Miller Moss potentially going to Michigan. we're floating the idea of him, wouldn't it be ironic if he went to UCLA? I mean, who had that on their bingo card 4 weeks ago, right? I mean, look at the state of where we are right now with college football. Kyle Ford went from USC to UCLA back to USC. I mean, look at where, these players are going year over year. So nothing is going to surprise you. I mean, in college football, a year from now, think about where we were a year ago at this point, Coach. I mean, it was Caleb was our quarterback. We were having all these conversations about Grinch. We were having all these conversations about winning all these games 50-49. I mean, how many lives has USC led from last year to this year in terms of Miller's emergence, Danton Lynn coming here, Entz coming here, Henderson coming here? getting a few of those Georgia 5-stars, losing those Georgia 5-stars, Bear getting NIL, losing Bear, Gentry redshirting, now beating LSU, now sort of collapsing, and now going on another quarterback. This has all happened in the last 12 months. We've lived 3 or 4 lives with USC football in the last 12 months. So Julian Lewis is going to say, hey, I might be feeling really good about 2025, but I'll absolutely, go with Coach Prime. It's a huge platform. It's Shedeur, in my opinion, is going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So there's clearly a pathway for me to make it in the NFL. And let me just sort of keep that door open, because who knows what's going to happen next year. Maybe Maiava blows up and becomes the starter for 2 years. Maybe Lincoln ends up becoming offensive coordinator in the NFL after next year, like Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, there's just so many variables that it never hurts to sort of keep your optionality open. So I think the answer is a little bit of both, Coach. I don't know if he's necessarily shopping for this year and for this cycle, but he's still kind of shopping for the future.
Yeah, I don't feel like he already took a visit with Prime. He took 2 visits with Prime.
Right, to sort of that point, right? I mean, so he's there's something there where he's intrigued, It's not like he's coming out and saying, hey, Coach, I really appreciate it. Let's keep the conversation going over text, over call, but I've committed to USC. I've told all the SC people I have, from the optics of it, I think I'm just going to kind of lock it up at this point. Nothing's stopping him from saying that. But, what kid is not going to want to go back to Boulder, hang out, have a good time, all that stuff? So I get it. But there's got to be something there that intrigues him. Now, I think most likely SC is going to win the day and he's still going to be a Trojan. But, that doesn't mean that Colorado isn't nipping on the heels right here and now. But also, depending on how things shake out over the next 12 months, why not keep that optionality open moving forward? There's no guarantees in college football anymore, which is also why it's so dangerous in today's college football to talk about, to your point, we're 1 year away. And it's all going to line up next year. There is no next year in college football. It can all change. It can totally go on its head more so than ever. The way you could stack recruiting classes, the way you could sort of build a talent pipeline 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, you can't do it now. There's no guarantees. When you're putting the puzzle pieces on the board, there's no guarantee that any puzzle piece is going to stick the way it did even 5 years ago. So given the fluidity of the sport, everyone is sort of keeping a lot of doors open. That's just become the transactional nature of college football. It feels a little like Wall Street, Coach.
I think it's a little shady. I think it's teaching bad ethics.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah.
I'm being real honest with you, because if a headhunter calls you for a job, right? They call you and then you talk to that company's recruiter. The company's recruiter always asks, "Are you looking at anything else right now?" They always ask, and it's always fair to be straight up like, "Yeah, you know what? I got 2 other interviews with 2 other companies. Like,
right.
I'm still interested in you guys. Like, but it might come down to negotiations and what you guys have to offer." It's also, what it is? You remember the trend after COVID when people were getting hired and then 3 months later going to get another job? I forgot what it was called.
Yeah.
But it's
folks
real
were shopping. There was that term quiet quitting. There was all kinds of stuff, Yeah.
But that's not how the real world works. You know what I mean? Let's just use my industry for an example. There's about big-time general contractors. There's about 5 of them. There's 5 big general contractors, right? And you see their banners all around. You can't end up working at all 5. And when you get to the 5th one, you have no place else to go. Right. You know what I'm saying? You have no place else to go. Now you have to take a step back, take a pay cut, and do things that you don't want to do. Excuse me. So it's creating a kind of thing if it doesn't go my way, I'll just go somewhere else. But you can't go somewhere else in real life. I'm not going to get down the road how NCAA completely messed this thing up. But if that's what they're doing, it's a little unethical to me. And I don't want to sound terrible, but it's kind of bad on the parents too, because they're letting this fly. I don't think I would let my kids do this. I would be like, look, If you're committed to the school, be committed to the school. If you're not committed, take your commitment back and tell them that you're shopping. You got to be upfront with people. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it's the way to do it.
Coach. Yeah, no, I'm with you. But that's a tough one, right? And the analogy that I'll give here to your point is it's kind of like the steroid era in baseball, right? Like, you remember the steroid era in baseball where it's like, steroids are wrong, but you also know everybody's doing it. You also know nobody's getting caught, and you also know that people are getting big-time contracts based on getting steroids. So what do? You can stick to your guns totally, but the chances of you getting a big contract then are much lower. And so that's the challenge that I think student athletes, inner circles have, is that, look, I think everyone sort of acknowledges this is kind of like a little sleazy, a little transactional where we are in college football, makes building culture so difficult, to sort of our point earlier. But if we don't play the game, we're going to be left behind. And we only have a certain window of opportunity where, our son is an elite prospect, where there's a window and a pathway to make it to the NFL and, live out the dreams and make a ton of money and really have a ton of prosperity. So it's very difficult, right? Certainly there's different roles, but if the behavior is being incentivized at a systemic level, really hard to sort of stand on an island, in the name of morality and ethics. And I agree with you. It isn't ethical. It isn't moral. I have a real problem with all of this transactional stuff the last couple of years, but I also empathize with the student athletes where it's like, look, if we don't play the game, we're going to be left behind. And then where does that leave us? You're almost forced to have to play the game. And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit with Julian. I think it's a combination of forced to be playing the game, but also it kind of, as a young kid, Boulder is one of the coolest places in the whole country. Why not take another trip? But also, you're in a situation where, look, their starting quarterback most likely is going to be the number one pick in the draft. So there's certainly a path to a lot of success in the NFL. There's a lot to be attractive about. So for all of those reasons, you're going to keep that flirtation forward.
One, the talent level is so bad that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the top quarterback taken in the draft. That's not good. Two, if Prime is supposed to be such a stand-up guy, why he's playing this sleazy game? And we'll leave it at that. No, but yeah, if he is shopping for the future, how committed is he really to being a Trojan? You know what I mean? Like,
well, how committed are any of these guys? That's the deeper question. It's not just a Julian Lewis thing. That's why I always, this one play away, 1 year away, it doesn't hold anymore. It's when you had guys sort of locked up and you said, oh, look at my pipeline, where, this guy would have to sort of sit for a year to transfer, where there was a real penalty to transferring. And I don't know if that was necessarily the right thing for the student athlete either. I think that was too harsh. But now it doesn't really matter what your pipeline is. The kid has a bad Wednesday, he's going to go in the portal. Like, there's no guarantee what you have in terms of your pipeline. You're always on edge. You're always recruiting. You're always sort of trying to retain. It's a very difficult spot. I mean, Coach, that's why we're seeing some of these guys. We saw it with Chip Kelly. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to be an offensive coordinator. We saw it with Tony Bennett in college basketball. Tony Bennett won the national championship with Virginia just a few years ago. He quit 2 weeks before the start of the college basketball season. It was a punch to the face. No one was expecting it. He's just kind of like, I just can't deal with this anymore. This is not what I signed up for. And I think we're going to see more and more trends. Saban as well. I mean, I think we're going to see more trends in that department, because it's just the power dynamic has shifted so violently in the other direction that sure. I mean, and that's why it's sort of laughable sometimes when we have these like class of 2026 conversations, like Oregon has the number one class in 26, USC has the number one class in 26. 26? I mean, look at what has happened to USC football in the last 9 months. You're telling me we're set up for success in 18 months? I mean, it's an incomprehensible amount of time where so much can change. That's the sad reality, is we all just have to kind of continue to be in the moment. It's never been harder, in my opinion, to be a college football coach than it is right now.
You know what keeps people there? Winning. Georgia don't have this problem. Alabama have the problem.
Winning and money. I mean, winning and nil.
money. Well, we got $50 million. We just got $50 million from Ron. Was it Ron Boone?
Ron Bloom. Yeah, Ronald Bloom.
Ron Boone. Yeah, we just got $50 million from Ron, but I don't think that's enough.
Well, and it's not for players. I mean, it's for the facility. I mean,
I thought he donated an extra to the NIL also.
I'm sure he did, but the 50 was for the football performance center, right? It's a $200 million, about $220 million project, and he's the lead donor with $50 million. I believe there's 4 other donors at about a $10 million level, and then a number of donors at various levels. And according to Jen Cohen, out of the 220, I believe about 160 or 170 has been accounted for. So looking at that final 50 or 60 to sort of close for this new performance center, that it should be really world-class, Coach. 160,000 square feet, multiple levels, multiple fields. It's really going to transform that piece of the campus. That piece of the campus used to be so open, actually, even with like that huge parking lot, parking lot before Caprellian Hall. Now we obviously have this like the biosciences building, the new computer science hall is there. Now to the right of that is going to be all the football complex stuff, and then just immediately adjacent to that, further up the block is the School of Cinematic Arts. So it's going to be really like concentrated. It's going to be so surreal for me to like walk on campus relative to when I did, because it was that part of campus was so open, by Galen Center and all of that. That it's going to be a little bit different. But
what are they doing with the tennis courts? Because the tennis courts was next to the parking lot.
Yeah. I think they're going to move it. There's some stuff. Yeah.
I was at some good tennis matches when I was
and Galen was great. I mean, obviously not the basketball stadium, but just the gym, right? I mean, there was such fun intramural games and all of that stuff. I mean, it was a ton of fun at Galen. And so, no, but I mean, it's a great day for SC in terms of the football performance center breaking ground. Todd Bloom made some really nice comments. Lincoln Riley, of course, was there. Carol Folt was there. Jen Cohen was there. Certainly a big day for SC. To really revamp their facilities. And now the Makai Center is going to serve as kind of the center, the sports center for all the other Olympic sports and all the other sports, including basketball, which will be really nice. And football's kind of on their own. So SC kind of elevating their facilities really helps. But I have to wonder, did 2010 call and they want their strategy back? I just don't know how much it's going to make, a difference in terms of tomorrow's student athlete. Obviously, everyone wants really nice locker rooms and all of that, but that craze, I don't know if it's the same thing. Do I want a really nice locker room, or do I want $750,000 and nil? Or I'll gladly take a $750,000 or $1 million and nil, and you give me some, second grade locker room. I mean, I wonder how much of a difference this is going to make, but certainly a great day nonetheless for SC and the campus.
Speaking of that, let's get into something real quick before we get out of here. So, and you mentioned it. We talked about it. Billy Napier. I got a lot of respect for Billy Napier before you said that. And I don't know what's wrong with Billy Napier of Florida. His career has been so good until now, and I don't know what's wrong or what's going through it. But in Gainesville, they're calling for Billy Napier's head, right? And his buyout is $26 million. And Florida can't raise $26 million to buy Billy Napier out. One, and I'll let you give the other part to it. That's why you're smiling like that. So I'll let you have the other part. So I'm going to say this. One, there's more issues than Billy Napier if they can't raise $26 million. Two, do you think Jimbo Fisher, thumbs up, check on the field, is the tip of the iceberg of coaches getting fired due to this because it's NIL thing? Or are these just like one-off things and unfaithful? Well, when you think about it, the fan base, there's two unrealistic fan bases. Texas A&M is unrealistic. They haven't won anything since Bear Bryant. And my grandparents were alive for Bear Bryant. My parents weren't even alive for him. Two, Florida only won Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier, and hasn't won anything other than that. They're best known for Gatorade, right? So maybe those fan bases are unrealistic and they want wins, but the reality is the reality. But or is this something that we should get ready for with expectations of fan bases due to NIL?
Yeah, it's a great question, Coach. I think to your point, look, with Jimbo, it was guaranteed money. Like Texas A&M is still there's a report out there, Coach, that Jimbo Fisher is actually interested in the West Virginia job because he's from West Virginia, and there's sort of an opportunity to go home. And he said, look, I don't really care that much about salary. Like, you could pay me $3 million a year. I'm good because I'm still getting, 10 from Texas A&M, right? I mean, and so there's a world there where it works out very nicely for West Virginia potentially if they choose to go down that route. I think, Coach, to your point, it's the domino effect. Like, let's take the Napier situation. Okay, you buy him out for 26. Whether you can afford it or you can't, whether you can raise the funds or you can't, those are two separate issues. If you can't raise the funds, then you're not going to be in a position to be very competitive from a top 12, 14, 15 standpoint. Like, you'll still be sort of a good team. Maybe every third or fourth year you'll threaten for a playoff berth, but you're not going to be a perennial playoff contender. So let's assume now that you can raise it. But then the conversation is, should you, right? Because you can always keep getting into this hole. So, like, let's say, for instance, with Napier, okay, I buy out Napier for 26. I hire another coach based on my irrational expectations. That coach is going to make 9 or 10 a year. So now I'm still paying Napier the 26. I'm paying the new guy, let's call it 40 over 4, and then building out his staff. Now, let's say that guy.
Don't forget benefits. Don't forget benefits.
Now, let's say that guy doesn't work out after 2 years, and the fan bases are clamoring. Now, what? I still have on my last year paying out Napier. I'm now got 2 years with the new guy. Now I got to go get another coach. So you can see where this thing can spiral, Coach, out of control, where you can just get further and further and further in debt. It's actually kind of what happened to UCLA.
How about did that happen to UCLA?
With UCLA, when it was Mora's dead money, when it was Steve Alford's dead money from a basketball standpoint, and you just keep paying dead money, you just get further and further back. So I think you have to now, you can't just put your chips on every hand. You can't go all in on every hand. Now you have to be a lot more intentional about where you're going to go all in. So I think Florida's kind of saying, he's got DJ Lagway. Lagway seems to, really kind of identify with him. We're not thrilled with 4-4. We're probably going to go 5-7 or 6-6. But, hey, let's give him one more year. The buyout number goes down, and then it puts us in a more financially solvent situation to then be able to make our next move. So I think that's what's got to happen here. I mean, same thing happened with Texas A&M with Mike Elko, right? I mean, he's sort of a program builder from Duke. They didn't go get some huge name from some other school. They had to kind of go a little bit of a lower level, really bright guy. He's a terrific coach, but they had to go more that route because you can't pay so many contracts at the same time. So I think it's going to make teams a little bit more cautious in the sense that they're going to have to sort of place their bets on certain hands. They just can't place their bets on all hands. And so I think that's where this thing is going to go moving forward, because if you have to pay multiple contracts of dead money and you got to pay the NIL and you got to sort of deal with rev share of up to 20 or 22 million of an athletic department as rev share, like that's just so many monetary streams right now. It's just untenable for the vast majority of programs in college football, including programs that have had a ton of success. To your point, like Florida, like Texas. I mean, Texas A&M had Manziel. They won the Heisman, a little over 10 years ago. These are not, group of 5 teams by any stretch of the imagination. Florida's won a national championship more recently than USC has. So, this is going to make things more challenging in my mind to just be so willy-nilly with these contracts.
So you think it's you don't think that it's going to be a thing? You think it's going to be like this is just 1 or 2 off? This is like a 1-2 type thing.
I think where it helps coaches, I think it's going to actually create a little bit more parity, to be honest with you, potentially on the secondary market. Because take like Jimbo Fisher, for instance. Now West Virginia has a chance to go get Jimbo Fisher. When would West Virginia have had a chance to go get a coach like Jimbo Fisher? Now they can, because somebody else is paying 80% of his market value, and I only need to come in and pay the 20%. So I think it actually creates a bigger secondary market where big name coaches now have the opportunity to go to places where maybe they have some sentimental value or they want to sort of turn it around because they're getting paid by another school. So it's actually sort of opening up another market in a very unique way.
I coached with a coach who was on a buyout.
Oh, really?
He was the defensive back coach at Cal when they fired the whole defensive staff, and he still had 3 years on his contract. And He was living pretty big in Las Vegas, New Mexico. He coached both sides, so he came over to be the offensive coordinator because he coached like running backs who went to live. He was switched over, it doesn't matter. But he was making like almost like $650 a year, and he was on that buyout, so he was living the life in Las Vegas,
so that's
New Mexico.
It. Like, secondary market.
Yeah, he was like, he legit told the head coach, he was like, just give me 25 because Cal's still paying the rest of my stuff, and give the money to everybody else because money's tighter there. But I mean, you're right about that. I could definitely see that happening. I just wonder. This is my only worry. Well, I'm gonna use an old school booster, the one that makes sure everything got done. Let's say Galen was donated to NIL, right? He's donating to NIL, and what if Galen starts to come and be like, "Nah, I don't like the way we're going. We need to make a change."
That's. I mean, we're
you think that's a possibility
right now. Absolutely. Okay. I mean, that's what. I mean, we're not paying Lincoln Riley's buyout, coach, right now. Not with 7 years left. It may be with 5, maybe, but not with 7. So that's where it is.
What do we have to do to get the Galen family back? Let's get the Galen family back. When the Galen family was all in, SC was rolling. We got to get the Galen family back, man. We should name the new facility after the Galens. They'll do it. I wonder who pissed them off at SC. I remember so many checks from that dude. It was crazy. It seemed like every halftime he was donating 6 figures or more.
That's all. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was a peak time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man, that's all I got for today. You got anything else before we check out here?
I'm good. Great conversation, Coach.
Good deal. Hey, guys, I appreciate you guys. Remember, go to betonline.ag to get all your bets in. Go to Underdog Fantasy, put in promo code USC LAFB to get a $100 match. If you guys want to know about all the other teams, go to LAFBnetwork.com. We got the Rams, we have the Chargers, we have the Trojans, we have the other team, and we're bringing in basketball. We're talking the little Dodgers. Just
Lakers.
Yeah, Lakers. Oh, I was saying basketball. So Madman is also going to Madman is also going to cover some basketball from Poly Pavilion.
No doubt.
Some Poly Pavilion. We're going to get some NBA basketball. We're going to get the Lakers. Are we going to do the Clippers too?
We are. We're doing the Clippers. Yep.
So unfortunate. That's going to be so much heartbreak. Are we doing the Angels?
I think so, but I think we're slow rolling the Angels. Yeah.
Let's roll them as slow as we possibly can.
Totally.
That's going to hurt. Definitely. And if you want to get some fantasy, go check out my brothers from another this side guys, Amar Desai, Tad Desai, to get you all your fantasy updates and get your team winning the championship this year so you don't have to go to Denny's and eat pancakes for 24 hours. Man, it was a great one. I appreciate you. I appreciate all your friends. You guys all go. Live free. Fight on.